Welcome to another episode of the Underground Bunker Podcast. This is your proprietor, Tony Ortega. And this week, I'm joined by Kat, who I'm so happy you reached out to me after the Austin Ideal org. How are you doing, Kat?
I'm good. I'm good. Just chilling in Austin.
Well, let's remind people who you are. And I want to thank you again because you went to the Austin Ideal org opening, or you tried to go, and reminded me about some great stuff we posted several years ago, and reminded me of just how much these poor Texas Scientologists have been under so much pressure for so many years to make this basically, it's a monument to David Miscavige's ego. But there's also a whole other story about how you got involved in all this. It's very unusual. Please remind everybody how you came to be in Scientology to begin with.
Okay. So, yes, it was a very strange story. It was a very odd thing for me to do as a person, but I'm owning it. So basically, I was a stand-up comedian in Austin. Been doing it for several years at that point. And a lot of comedians, they do stand up, but they also do YouTube content, now TikTok and all that stuff. But back then, it was a lot of people doing YouTube stuff. And so I had an idea, because I knew a lot about Scientology already. I wanted to do some sort of comedic series on Scientology. Specifically, I thought there was like a bit of a gap in the sort of info out there about what people actually do in the classes, like what they're actually learning, how they spend their time in these courses. And even I didn't know exactly what went down. So I wanted to, take some courses there and see, what I could learn, and then maybe do sort of like a comedic, like, at the time it was like drunk history was a big thing. So I was like, maybe we can do drunk psychology. It was just, there was just a vague idea in my head. But what ended up happening was I got much more sucked into just the entire situation that was going on there. I thought I could just take some courses and be sort of separate, but it definitely lured me in. I got very kind of attached to people. I ended up hanging around for solid year, and then like there was like 4 or 5 months where I was just kind of on the way out, being kicked out. So
Were you aware at the time? I mean, were you conscious at the time that, hey, this is not going the way I had planned? I'm getting in a little deeper than I expected. Uh, you know, how did you handle that?
yeah, I definitely realized that I was off of my path. Um, but I sort of got an attitude about it where I was like, you know what, I'm actually, I don't know if it was just I was entertained, or if I was just more moved, or like what was going on, but I consciously was like, I want to keep seeing where this goes. There was a slight bit of addiction to like just discovering things, like observing things. And I just sort of accepted that. However, another thing started to emerge where I did feel a little bit trapped, because at a certain point I was like, well, if I do end up making something of this, then that means I do have to disavow these people, and then I'll never be able to speak to them again. So for a while, I had a very difficult time deciding what I wanted to do, because the only way to detach was to give up all these relationships that I'd created.
Besides the attachments you were forming with other people, were you getting interested in some of the tech, or were you always kind of aware that, no, I'm just going along because this is what I want to do, and I'm not really falling for it?
Yeah, no, I was not interested in the tech, or like giving it sort of validity. I did find myself, like I said, sort of addicted to finding out more. Um, so yeah, I never really took it seriously, but I definitely felt that pull of like, I just want to see, what's next, you know.
And how much pressure on you at the time was there about money?
Oh, yeah, that was just sort of a constant. I mean, I think that they assess kind of like where you're at financially and apply however much they can in that direction. I know that as I got deeper in, there was more um, kind of direct pressure that was like I was getting text messages to like urging me to call people that I was in debt to settle debts, so that I could take out a credit card. That took a while, but once I was in, they were ready to like ask that of me.
And what about family and friends? What were you saying to people that were kind of like, Kat, what are you doing? Why are you getting involved with this group? What were you telling them?
Well, it was interesting. There's sort of two different takes on it. The people that I was really close to, my closest friends, they understood, like they knew me well enough to know that I wasn't going to get brainwashed. Um, I think they were just sort of sitting back being like, all right, just let her do what she wants. She's going to do it. But they weren't worried about me necessarily. Um, the sort of, because I was in comedy, there's a sort of broader social community that I was part of. People that didn't know me as well, definitely were like juicy bit of gossip, local comedians like getting involved in Scientology, and lots of people thought I had actually become one. And so, yeah, that was interesting.
And tell me about now, Scientology is at least in the United States, is primarily a California and Florida thing. And Texas is interesting because, we joke about all our exes are in Texas because, you have a cluster of well-known former Scientologists that go there. And some of them have told me they choose Texas because it's as far away as you can get from California and Florida. However, there are a couple of spots there that have been long time Scientology hotspots, and one of them, of course, is Austin. It sounds like, although you weren't there a long time, you got a very good understanding of who was who at that facility and who was making things happen. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so at the time I was there right as things were starting to change because they had been fundraising for the Ideal org for like 13 years at that point. Like it'd been a long time already.
And this was like 2017 around with what you
Yeah,
were doing
yeah,
that? Okay.
2017.
So
Mhm.
already they'd been raising money for 13 years. Incredible.
So because of that, I think I got to see more of who was the bigwigs around there because they were counting on big donations. So lots of names of the people that had the most money that were contributing the most, and those people turning around and really pushing the rest of the congregation to, um, donate. Also, the other factor was that since I didn't get um, I had my own personal social life. So the people that I got close to were just staff members. People that were, the most dedicated of the Austin group was the staff members because that's who I was interacting with.
And was there pressure on them to donate, even though were making very little money?
Oh yeah, yeah. I knew a kid who was 23, and he told me that he'd taken out I don't know how he got it, but he had taken out a $10,000 loan to give to them.
Incredible.
So yeah.
Incredible. And what was some of the things you were hearing about how long it was going to take, what was going to be the effect? What were some of the things people were told about the sort of magic of an ideal org?
I think there was an awareness in Austin of that they were sort of a backwater org, that they weren't the center of Scientology in any way.
Oh,
There was a little bit of I sense like some shame about it. And the idea that they were getting was, well, we'll be able to turn it around whenever the ideal org comes. Like that's our big thing. That's why we're not moving forward. We just need that ideal org. Because things aren't set up right for it to go right.
And wow, they tried. You and I put together some footage and posted on the bunker going back a few years. And it's just fascinating to me to see how they convince Scientologists to come down to these things with the themed parties and the costume parties. I mean, some of that stuff was just totally bizarre.
Oh yeah, I actually have something. I have my little finish it crazy town thing. You can see how you have so far contributed 0. Achieving the status of friend, you need 500 to achieve the Done Sir Bronco. So yeah, that was
They gamify it. They always turn it
oh.
into a game. They always have these levels. I
Mhm.
didn't know that in Austin you were trying to reach Bronco. I think the most outrageous was Harlem. If you donated a certain amount of money, you became a homie.
Yeah. That tracks.
But they really played up all the cowboy stuff and all the Austin thing, right? All the
Oh
Austin
yeah.
fundraising, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, tell me a little bit about, so can you give me a little bit on the technical side about what courses you ended up doing? I mean, I know it's not going to mean everything to everybody, but some people will be very curious about what you actually went through.
Sure. So started out personality test, IQ test. Went to got sold a Dianetics book that came with a free Dianetics session. Did the Dianetics session. Next thing was they sold me the Dianetics seminar. I did that. It's like a 2-day thing that I did with another new person. And then I took the Success Through Communication course. Couple of extension courses where you're just on your own doing reading. And then the big one that I did was the Hubbard Qualified Scientologist course. And that was the one where I was like, that was kind of my like, okay, I'm actually gonna be here for a while. It was like, I need to say yes to this so that I can keep coming. But if I do say yes to it, it's going to keep, it's a long course.
What are some of the things it involves?
So that was, of course, every course has some reading and listening to audio, answering questions based on that. And then for HQS, they partner you up with another Scientologist or someone new. I got partnered up with a guy that was new he left eventually, but um, he and I basically would run drills to train on how to become auditors at that level. Um, and then we would um, do the auditing on each other. There's objective auditing, which is sort of like a more movement. You're moving around. You're not on the e-meter or anything. And then the other type of auditing on the meter. But we just did the objective auditing. Um, and
And,
that's the what?
and you said you did the comm course, so did you do the bull baiting?
Yeah, yeah. It was
Tell me
the
about bull baiting.
well, it was I was told that it was sort of the training wheels bull baiting. It was explained to me that on a real bull baiting thing that they would really like they could touch you, they could say sexual things to you, all that kind of stuff. But um for me, the bull baiting was I was with this guy, Jeff, who was a longtime Scientologist. He found out a little bit about me, knew that my politics were more liberal, which contrasted to most of them. So what he would do would be like he would do like offensive voices, um, yeah, I recorded, like, I audio recorded a lot of our stuff, but I missed the one where he did the voices, and it was it was really funny because of how offensive it was.
And just
Um,
for those few people who may not know what we're talking about, a very early experience in a Scientologist career is this thing called bullbaiting, where you're supposed to sit perfectly still while the other person is shouting at you, saying rude things to you, doing things to try to get you to flinch. And you're supposed to just hold perfectly still. Um, did what was your idea of why they were doing that? What did they tell you was the point of sitting still through abuse, basically?
Um, I mean, the guy that I did it with, he constantly was praising the communication course for just how much it gets you to be a better communicator. So that was the big thing for them was, oh, it's a bet you're a better communicator. He also brought up the fact that there's a lot of people that are against Scientology, so it kind of trains you to be able to withstand all of that negative talk. And yeah, there was nothing like, oh, we're priming you or anything like that. But like, yeah.
And then in the objectives, that's like go touch that wall or making people turn a certain way or picking up a book.
Mhm.
Um, I would think that would be kind of tough if you were sort of doing it cynically. I mean, if you were completely committed to it, I can see, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick up this book. I'm going to touch that wall. I'm going to, but if you're just sort of like gathering data, was it hard for you to keep the TRs in, as they say?
Um, yeah, I mean, like the way that I kind of did it was that I tried to commit to like an authentic experience. So I was, just trying to get in the mindset basically. But I really started to dread it. It was really something that um it takes a lot out of you.
I can
Um,
imagine. I've
yeah.
heard that the objectives are just physically grueling as well as, intellectually draining.
Yeah, I mean, there was I definitely, they have this phenomenon or whatever of doping out or like, where you sort of like kind of fall asleep while you're still awake. That happened to me like 3 times
Wow.
because it was just hours of doing repetitive stuff and your mind goes different places. And I, on a few instances, felt like I had fallen asleep and just woke up.
Yeah. Wow. So can you tell us, what started to convince you, okay, I need to get out of here? And was it a combination of just that fatigue for the material, or were there some people doing some things you didn't like?
Well, as it started going on more months, I was like, I really can't keep doing this. Like, it's not, it's just not the right thing to do to stay here as long. And there was a lot of different things that were happening. I was starting to really get worn out by how much I felt bad for everyone that was there. I was seeing a lot of uh, people being really tired, suffering, pushing themselves when they clearly needed a rest. And then, I started to get in, uh, I was put in contact with Lori, whose daughter and son were part of the org, and um, being sort of more connected to that situation, I really started to be kind of angry, and I just couldn't stand to be like, it was just such a weight to be around these people that I knew were part of something so terrible, and that something so painful for someone. And I was, it was just become, it was too much was piling up.
How did you make your exit?
So it's kind of a mistake, but I just accepted it that I was like, I just kind of went with it. I couldn't keep myself from just piping up about my feelings. And eventually I kind of pushed it a little too far. Kind of was too open with the things that I knew. And so they put me, on a ethics thing, and they interrogated me and all that. And basically the bottom line was either you submit to this ethics process where you're just begging us basically to let you be back again, or you fuck off. So eventually I was like, okay, I gotta go.
Wow. Wow. Did they try to recover you later? Because they do that a lot.
They did. They sent Jeff, the guy that I did the comm course with, and it felt sort of like he was sort of scoping out, like either he was trying to figure out like if I had a bad experience that I was going to talk to people about, because at that point they didn't know who I was, um, or he was trying to fish to see if I was interested in coming back.
Right.
So that was like a couple of months after I had no contact with them.
Um, how did, in your experience, how did people talk about David Miscavige? How did they think of him in 2017 in Austin?
I mean, it was just praise. I'll be honest, I didn't really hear people talk that much about David Miscavige. Like, he didn't carry the awe that Hubbard did. He was just he was kind of seen more as like, okay, this guy's manning the ship. He's leading us. He's our leader.
Right. Well, did they feel that donating all this money to a new facility was somehow honoring Hubbard?
Um, I don't really remember. I'm sure that's how they felt about it. I think their main thing was we have to do this because we want to have lots of people in the org.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. So, I mean, it'd been quite a while since you left that they finally got around to opening this thing. How much interaction has there been in those years for you with those folks?
Really none. I did reach out to, I mean, I tried to reach out to I had a couple of people in there that I really cared about, and I tried to reach out to them, but radio silence, um, blocked on Facebook, all that kind of thing. I did have one guy who I guess he was allowed to be like the one channel or terminal that I could speak to. So I did reach out to him in 2020. I asked him like, how are you guys doing with the COVID, all that stuff? And he said, we're doing fine. Um, and eventually, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, hope you're doing well. Um, Sorry for all the deception, but I care about you guys. Hope you're well. Maybe someday we can talk. That
Well,
was about it.
you did a couple videos with Chris Shelton when you came out. Did you hear much about that from anybody inside at all?
No, I didn't hear anything. Yeah, there was no response. There was nothing.
And then you helped me put together something great. I mean, that footage is so amazing. I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy fundraising footage. Um, but I mean, come on, doing the hula in Texas.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's the guy, that's the guy that did the offensive voices. So he's
oh,
like a jack of all trades for being offensive.
oh man. Was and so okay, so this last weekend, finally, they took out permits, they canceled permits. Um, I think that thing's been ready to open for like 3 or 4 years. And finally Dave decided he's gonna do it. Um, and I mean it looked like it was the usual thing. They set up a bunch of shrubs, they get a bunch of security guards. But how close were you able to get? I mean, you were able to hear Dave pretty well, right?
Yeah. So uh they were in a side street, and just like in this one portion between Guadalupe and San Antonio Street.
How much of Guadalupe did they actually shut down?
None. They didn't shut any of it down.
Okay.
There was just sort of a path that people, there's like a big bike lane, and so they were able to have that space open for people to keep going by. But they shut off all of 22nd between Guad and San Antonio.
Okay.
So I was able to get pretty close. Like I was just outside of the cars that were parked on Guadalupe. Yeah.
Did anybody recognize you that from the org?
I actually really didn't see, I think the people that I knew were more in like, by the time I got there around 1:30 or like 1, most of the people I probably knew were already inside. So no one that I knew, I don't think saw me, or like I didn't see them see me.
And how well could you hear Dave?
Pretty well. There was a lot of people honking. So there was, yeah, um, you couldn't really hear him some of the time, but you know, I could make out what he was saying. I think people on the street could hear. I saw this guy like just make a face, this like sort of bystander that was like, because he was talking about Crazy Town, and I just saw the look on that guy's face. So
I guess that's something that he does at these things is he does give some shout outs to the local folks that have raised so much money, which is smart on his part.
mhm.
But it does seem kind of amazing that he would make references to Crazy Town. I actually have a video somewhere where around that period that you were there, 2017 or so, 2016, he showed some video of the fundraising going on, I think in Europe. And it was the same kind of thing. Everyone was in costumes. It was like a tropical theme or a pirate theme or whatever. And they cut back to Miscavige and he's laughing at them. I mean, it's so obvious he was laughing at them. He thought it was so ridiculous. So I think it's interesting that he would reference Crazy Town because he probably thinks they're all crazy for doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's going back to what you're saying about like how did people regard Miscavige? I think they can, not consciously, but they can feel that he doesn't have the same sort of mutual obsession that Hubbard had with his followers. There's not that caretakery sense. So there's, yeah, he's just sort of not seen with quite as much love, I don't think.
It's isn't it more fear?
Yeah, I think so.
And you were there, but I just read what they put out in the press release, and of course he has to go into the wherever he is. They dream up these local references for him, and he was going big on the whole Texas freedom, Texas pride thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Austin is not like the rest of Texas, right?
No, I mean it is to some extent. It's there's definitely a cowboy vibe here. I think a lot of people that move here sort of play up that, like they move from out of state. So it felt like a guy that wasn't from Austin, you know, being like, yeah, Cowboys, Texas, you know, barbecue.
He didn't make any South by Southwest references, did he? I don't think I saw any.
Yeah.
So what were some of your other observations about what went down that day?
Um, well, you know, he shouted out these people that gave a lot of money. He did not shout out the people that had given up all their time. You know,
Ah,
people, lowly staff members that have dedicated hours and hours and hours to this. No mention,
right.
because they don't have the bucks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the that was one thing that just came to mind while I was there. I think, you know, people in Austin have been just like mystified by what's going on with the building. And because it's just been sitting there vacant for so long.
Were you surprised to see there was so little media, local media interest in what was going on?
Mm, no, I think people are kind of over it in terms of people don't really care what Scientology is doing in Austin. mostly that building is an eyesore for a lot of people. There was a fake article that came out that said that they were going to turn it into an HEB, and I think mostly people are disappointed that it's not a grocery store. So,
I mean, it does have prime location, right? It's right across from the University of Texas, right?
yeah, sure is.
Had you heard of any of these four local dignitaries who were honored guests and spoke on behalf of Scientology?
No, I'm not personally familiar with any of them. I do know about the interfaith group. Uh, I am involved in the Jewish community in Austin. So I know as a real member, but so I know that some of the people that I know are involved in the interfaith group. But I don't know if that was something that even was made public to people that are involved with it. It kind of mystifies me, like how that whole thing happens.
It is strange, and they love interfaith groups, but I feel like they tend to develop relationships with folks. I mean, they're shills. They're very legitimate interfaith groups doing very good work, but that's not who Scientology attracts.
Yeah.
They attract these shills that'll say whatever they want them to say, and it's just bizarre.
Yeah.
Um, and then to have a NAACP representative
I
going
think,
on and on about what a great guy L. Ron Hubbard was. I mean, that was just awful.
yeah, that was the only, because I had gotten there late, so that was the only guy that I heard. And I was just like, oh man, they got it sucked to hear. Um, yeah.
God. And it's funny because I agree with you. I think Scientologists tend to be conservative. I think it tends to be a conservative organization. But David Miscavige really pays a lot of attention to PR that reaches out to give the impression that Scientology is a very inclusive thing, and all of their media they make sure and have a lot of people of color, and they talk in ways that are very inclusive. Which I wonder who's consulting Dave on that, because we all know it's one of the widest organizations in the country, and Hubbard was an apartheid supporter, and I don't know. It's just funny to me that Dave goes all in on this really touchy-feely PR.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the people that are in, to the extent that they even pay attention to that, I think they know the drill about like how we present ourselves to the outside versus how we really are, you know. But I think he knows that he doesn't want to cross a certain cultural, he doesn't want to get involved in a certain type of cultural war.
Right, right. Yeah. It's funny because Scientology clearly doesn't care about its public, reputation in some ways, but it cares a lot in other ways. So, for example, in court fights in particular, their attorneys will just lay it out in documents in the most amazing ways. Yeah, we can treat people however we want to. I don't care if they're only 15 and they signed up for a lifetime. We can treat them however we want. I mean, they don't worry in court about how they come off. But then in other ways, in their Super Bowl ad and their, the film they'll make from this about the ideal org, they seem to really care about what the people think and what they put on Scientology TV. So it's kind of a funny dichotomy that it's this ruthless organization that doesn't mind coming off ruthless in some ways, but in other ways, they're very sensitive to how they appear. I don't know, the people you met inside, you said you found some people that you really cared about, right?
Yeah. Hmm. I think um I think they know that there's only a certain amount of people that will pay attention to the court stuff. You know, there's a lot more people that are going to watch the Super Bowl. So I think they kind of calculate, this is just my theory. They calculate like what they because they know that they can't stop a lot of stuff from getting out, but they kind of are, trying to play the cards that they have, I guess.
Are you curious about what it's like inside? Do you think you might go back sometime and just at least get a walk through?
I don't think I'd be able to. Yeah, I think they would turn me away.
Yeah. They have put out some pictures that are kind of funny because it's like the Lone Star Cafe and
Mm,
everything is themed that way, which is funny. I mean, they spend so much money on that kind of thing. It's amazing. But then we
yeah.
saw those videos that that we put out, that you helped me put out. I mean, they were just asking people for so much money, and they had to wait for so long. I am curious how they feel about that.
I mean, even when they first got into the temporary building, I know that they were very fatigued by it. Like it was very much like a thing where it was always sort of beneath the surface of like, man, we're really ready for this to happen. We're really ready for this to happen. And that was right whenever I left, which was right when they got into the temporary space. So I know that they were like so ready for it to finally get done.
And now they need to win the birthday game.
Yeah, another task.
But it's going to be tough because with Chicago and Mexico City and Paris coming online, everyone's going to want to win that birthday game.
Yeah, I guess that's wild.
So when people ask you about Scientology, what are some of the key things you like to tell people about your time in and what you experienced? What do you want people to take away from it?
Uh, I mean, I guess I try to explain, that people aren't like like robots. It's much different than you might expect uh, a cult to be. There's a constant sort of like push and pull of the individual versus like the group identity. And I think, I don't know, there's lots of things I could say about it, but I think it's just mostly fascinating from a human nature perspective. I think I learned a lot about, what drives people, and what people are searching for, that they kind of end up in these wrong places going down these roads.
What would you say to a family that wanted to get out somebody that you had met in the org? What would you tell them might be the most effective way to talk to them to get them to start looking in a different direction?
I mean, it's tough. There's not really a whole lot you can say to someone unless they're really ready to leave. I think it usually requires something big happening to them, really negative, for them to question. So, I mean, I guess if I were to say anything to someone, a family that was looking to leave, I think I would just encourage them to really think through what they can, give up in terms of people or experiences, and what they could possibly gain from leaving, um, parts of themselves that they want to explore, things that they have really desired while they're in Scientology, but have been prevented from going for. Like, think about what you could possibly experience in life that you have been prevented from experiencing.
Was there anyone there that you wish you could personally help get out of there?
uh, I mean, all of them. um, I mean, there's one particular guy that I think, like I hadn't, I've kept myself away from looking too much into it because it's painful. But I did, see this guy's like Facebook page recently, and I teared up. Like, I was like, I miss this guy. This was this person that I wanted to be friends with. And yeah, I would love for him to, you know, get free of it, or at least not be on staff, like be like live like a very detached Scientologist, if at the most, because I know that he has family and that he doesn't want to give up. So yeah, I just was constantly wanting that this particular person to advocate for themselves, to care about their own personal desires and to go for those things, you know, and not feel so pressured to give their entire life to the Austin Scientology org.
Well, that's a great impulse that you have to, want to help somebody like that. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that there are really good people in there that just could probably use a little push in a different direction, and maybe they'd see things differently.
Yeah.
Um, but then there's the guy with the coconuts on his chest that
Yeah,
does
yeah,
voices in bullbaiting, and
yeah, I don't know how that guy's doing, but I like at the time that I was in, there was like he was about to, well, I don't know if he was imminently, but there was talk of how he needed to like disconnect from his son. Like there was,
oh,
it was, you know, and I was like, man, even that guy, I was like, come on, dude. Like, snap out of it.
so there was open talk about this connection in front of you.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think they probably wouldn't have done that right away, but about 7 months in, he was talking about it. Like I heard him talking about it to another person, and he explained it to me as well. Um,
Well, if you were there in 2017, did you see some of these credit card pushes on people to open up new credit cards, to take new lines of credit, in order to pile up their donations?
yeah, I mean they tried to get me to get credit cards and stuff. Like it was pretty. I mean that was just par for the course.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, interesting. I mean, I have talked to a few other people that said, I went in just to prove everybody wrong, and I'm not going to get sucked in. And they got sucked in.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think it sounds like you kind of, even though you got more involved and you developed some relationships, you always were kind of keeping your eye on what was really going on.
Oh yeah. I mean I had read Going Clear, and I had been a fan of Chris Shelton, and you know like watched all his videos, all these interviews with people. So there was no sense of like, oh, this could be a good thing. No. So,
All right. Well, gosh, and now they've got an ideal org. So Austin is set.
yeah, they're straight up and vertical.
But Austin has an ideal org, and Dallas has an ideal org. San Antonio has an ideal org. Houston only has a mission,
Oh,
and it's the biggest city in the whole state, right?
yeah. Well, it's not the whitest city in the whole state.
Well, there maybe that has something to do with it. Very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like Houston. All right.
me too.
Uh, do you want to bring us up to date on what you're doing, and what's the latest with you?
You know, not much. You know, I like I said, I don't keep up with Scientology as much as I used to. You know, I kind of have abandoned the comedy thing, just to be real. It's I might go, you know, I might go up back up on stage and just do like for fun, but in terms of creating content, probably not.
Hard, hard.
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah, like I was a teacher for a couple of years, and I was like, okay, maybe I should get a career. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Well, you're still young. You're
Yeah,
still young. You'll figure it out.
yeah,
But I just want to tell you how much I'm grateful that you helped us out with the fundraising videos, and then went to the event and told us about it. And you were probably the only person outside of the barriers that understood what he was talking about when David Miscavige was talking about Crazy Town.
yeah. I couldn't believe he brought it up. It was so funny. I was like, oh, flashbacks.
All right. Well, listen, Kat, thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to talk to us about?
Um, eh, no, I don't think so. I mean, I'm glad that you invited me on. I wasn't really expecting to talk again about Scientology, but it's interesting. It's really interesting to revisit all that stuff. But yeah,
Well, you really have an insider's understanding of that place. And that's something that, every one of these places has their powerful families and involved families, and these families get involved with each other, and it can become like Peyton Place and all that crazy stuff, and some people get disconnected from. So, I mean, every org has that kind of entanglement, and so it's fascinating to hear from somebody that was in long enough to tell us a little bit about who's who. And so that's what I really appreciated about your report on Saturday. That was really fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think, this is like made me start to think like I should probably take like I dragged out all my stuff. So I'm like, maybe I should take like a like note of all this stuff and maybe combine it into something that's like more of a complete picture. So yeah, if I do that, I'll send it to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Kat.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I'm sure Austin will do its best to win the birthday game. And in a year, that thing is going to be so dead.
Mhm.
So dead.
Yeah.
Like all of them.
Indeed. I'm ready for that to happen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Kat. I'll
Thank
talk to you
you.
later.
Talk
Bye-bye.
to you later. Bye.